Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 175. Shizun, do you like me? When Chu Wanning was eating the last steamed bun, the door behind him opened. Mo Ran walked in with a pile of things and placed them on the bed. Shizun, there are some unused talismans in your outer robe that you forgot take out. I've put them all here for you. After he finished speaking, he lowered his head and walked out again. He was really too embarrassed to directly take the brocade pouch and ask Chu Wanning about it. He always felt that no matter what the other man said, the atmosphere would be extremely awkward. Moreover, Chu Wanning's face was so thin and his mouth was so clumsy. If by any chance he said something wrong and made him unhappy, what should he do? Mo Ran pursed his lips. His black eyes flashed with a burning light. He was a little confused and feeling a little at a loss. He suddenly had a thought that even he himself found inconceivable. Could it be that Chu Wanning? Did he actually like him? Mo Ran was shocked by his own bold and delusional thoughts. He hurriedly shook his head and muttered in a low voice, "Impossible, impossible. As the saying goes, one can't see the true face of Mount Lu if one were in the Mount Lu." This was probably the case. If this brocade pouch belonged to someone Mo Ran didn't care about at all, such as a random female cultivator, then Mo Ran would definitely know and be able to determine the other party's feelings. If they didn't like him, why would they keep this brocade pouch with another person's hair for so many years? Originally, things were only this simple. However, as soon as the matter involved Chu Wanning, Mo Ran became confused. People were normally like this. The more they cared, the easier it was for their imagination to run wild. They would become very clumsy, not even knowing where to put their hands and feet. A single glance from the other party could make them feel conflicted for a long time. The other party was silent, but from that silence, they could carefully dig 3 feet into the ground and dig out the hidden meaning behind the pause. In this way, no matter how simple a matter was, he would repeatedly ponder over it, carefully chewing and swallowing, tasting a lot of complicated feelings. Did he make a mistake? Did he misunderstand? Could it be that Chu Wanning just simply forgot to throw it away? This was a question that one could easily answer even if the person was thinking using their toes. However, this question actually stumped Mo Ran for a long time. He was lost in thought as he absent-mindedly washed the clothes in the bucket. The water got colder and colder, but he only felt hotter and hotter. Mo Ran couldn't help but raise his head and look towards the house. Through the old wooden windows that were covered with paper, golden candlelight shone through. The candlelight flickered, dimming and brightening alternatively. Even the tender bud in Mo Ran's chest trembled and swayed softly. If Chu Wanning really liked him. He used to be that thick-skinned cultivation emperor, Taxian Jun, yet, he had only thought half of the sentence and his face had already turned red. Mo Ran felt a little hot and thirsty. It was a thirst that couldn't be quenched by water. The only one who could soothe his heat was the person in the room. Only the sweetness from that person's mouth could comfort him greatly and give him a moment of peace. Only that person, the man he swore to cherish, protect, and respect. When he thought of respect, Mo Ran's burning chest seemed to have been splashed with a cup of water. In the past, when he couldn't control himself and developed a strong desire for Chu Wanning, he would always remind himself like this and reprimand himself. But tonight, it was different. Tonight, that brocade pouch seemed to have added a handful of dry firewood soaked in pine oil to the burning heat in his heart, fueling his ambition. Respect. He kept telling himself, but it was like a cup of water being poured on a burning cart of firewood. The thoughts that could always be extinguished in the past burned aggressively at this moment. The cold water that was splashed on him instantly evaporated into wisps of steam, making his eyes dazed. Thus, Mo Ran was shocked to find that the mantra of respect had finally, completely become, ineffective. It failed to work this time. In the room, Chu Wanning ate the last steamed bun. He wanted to wipe his fingers, so he walked to the bedside and took out his Haetang embroidered handkerchief from the pile of things Mo Ran brought in. He sighed, thinking that his memory was really bad. Before washing the robes, he forgot to take out these things inside first. He made a fool of himself in front of Mo Ran. He also didn't know that he... Before he even finished the thought, he suddenly saw a slender red string underneath the pile of talismans. Chu Wanning's heart thumped. He reached out to take out the red string to take a look, but his fingers paused in the air, not daring to move forward. After hesitating for a moment, he withdrew his hand and reached into his lapel to feel the position closest to his heart. As soon as he touched it, his expression suddenly changed. His acacia flower brocade pouch really wasn't on him. Chu Wanning suddenly felt extremely uneasy. After a long while, he remembered that he usually kept the brocade pouch that he got from the Ghost Master of Ceremonies inside his lapel. However, the inner pocket of the ceremonial robe that Xue Zhenyang ordered was slightly slanted. The brocade pouch was soft and slippery. He was afraid that he would accidentally drop it, so he kept it in the pocket of his outer robe. When he carefully looked at the pile of things, he felt as if he was struck by lightning and couldn't move. Small things like candy were all placed at the top and below were the unused talismans. Only the red string was hidden at the bottom. The person who hid it seemed to be blushing as he repeatedly waved his hand and said, "I didn't see it. I didn't see anything." After a long while, Chu Wanning held his breath. With a glimmer of hope, he held the end of the red string and pulled it out from the messy pile of talismans. Sure enough, the red string of the brocade pouch had been moved. It was completely different from the way he used to tie it. No matter how calm he was, his fair cheeks quickly flushed red. His ears were so red that it seemed like blood was going to drip down from it. He opened the brocade pouch tied by the red string. The two strands of ink-black hair that had been entangled with each other for many years were like the thoughts that had been secretly coiling around him for many years. Just like that, they fell into the warm yellow candlelight and wrapped around his fingers. Mo Ran saw his brocade pouch. After seeing it, he even gave indication that he was hiding something. He buried the brocade pouch at the bottom of the pile. This realization made Chu Wanning's head explode and his blood surged. His heart could no longer calm down. His whole face was as hot as burning charcoal. What should I do? Did Mo Ran already know what he was hidden in his heart? It's over. The person Mo Ran likes is Shi Mingjing. If he knows that I have feelings for him, he will definitely be scared. Will the gentle and soft relationship between the two of them collapse just like that? Chu Wanning's mind was in chaos. His hand tightly grasped the brocade pouch. After a long time, he calmed down a little. He hoped that Mo Ran didn't know. Betting on his good reputation of being a pure and simple man of few desires for many years, he hoped that Mo Ran wouldn't suspect anything. Normally, if one day one's long-lasting secret love was found out by one's beloved, then it couldn't be better. It would be a kind of relief. But for Chu Wanning, perhaps this was not the case. He was already 32 years old. He had long been used to being alone. Meanwhile Mo Ran and Shi Mei were both at the prime of their lives, young and full of vigor. Chu Wanning had always been alone. He had never thought that at his age, he would still have the opportunity to be with the one he loves. Revealing one's true feelings was undoubtedly the beginning of a relationship. But it was also possible that it would end in failure. Chu Wanning put away the brocade pouch again and paced back and forth in the room. Finally, he stopped in front of the dusty bronze mirror. He raised his eyelids and looked inside. The mirror had not been used for a long time. It was covered with a thick layer of dust and could only reflect a rough shadow. So, he raised his hand and wiped the surface of the mirror. From the place where the dust has been cleared, a face that was not so perfect was revealed. There was a scratch on the bronze mirror. It happened to fall into the corner of his eye. Chu Wanning blinked and looked at himself. So ugly. He looked at the person in the mirror and suddenly he felt infuriated and depressed. How could I look like this? He knew that Mo Ran liked gentle, good-looking, slender, and beautiful young men. And he was not any of those. Although he did not have any wrinkles, the weight of time on a person's body could not be hidden. Chu Wanning was no longer young and was already a mature person. Now that he did not have the slightest bit of warmth in his personality, how could he have the nerve to talk about love with a young man? More so if that young man was his very own disciple. If this information spread out, not to mention himself, the whole Shisheng Peak would be embarrassed, let alone Mo Ran. Moreover, as he slept for 5 years, Shi Mingjing grew up to be more and more beautiful, peerless in his generation. Even when he wasn't smiling, his eyes still looked as lovely as peaches. Then he looked at the person in the mirror again. In between his eyebrows, there was only an unpleasant air of hostility and arrogance. Comparing the two of them, it was obvious who was superior. Only a fool would choose him. Chu Wanning looked at the dim bronze mirror. He thought to himself that if time could be rewound 10 years ago and this ugly guy in the mirror had fallen in love with someone in his 20s, perhaps he would still recklessly confess due to his hot-bloodedness. It wouldn't matter even if his head was bruised and bleeding. But now he was already more than 30 years old. He was no longer young. All that was left in him was a sorry figure, his vigilance, his harsh attitude and a fierce face that would scare a child to tears. Mo Ran was in his prime and Shi Mei was devastatingly beautiful. While he was no more than an ugly man who was no longer young. He did not dare to ask for anything and just wanted to hide. He only wanted to live peacefully like this. He did not even dare to think that he would be allowed to have a one-sided love, allowed to have a crush on a person, allowed to have a legitimate reason to treat that person well in the guise of his Shizun. He felt that it was enough. He was very satisfied with this. Right at this moment, a creaking sound came from behind him. Chu Wanning did not turn his head. From the copper mirror, he saw Mo Ran carrying a wooden bucket and walking into the room. Neither of them said anything. The copper mirror was still a bit blurry. Chu Wanning could only see a tall figure standing at the door, but he could not see clearly what kind of expression that figure had, or what kind of ripples of color were flowing in his eyes. Even though he had repeated to himself 100 times to remain calm, Chu Wanning's heart was beating very fast for no reason. He did not want Mo Ran to see his awkwardness, so he undid his high ponytail and bit the hairband between his teeth. He lowered his head and pretended to retie his hair in front of the mirror. He felt that this was really a smart move. Biting the hairband gave him a reason not to open his mouth to greet the other person. That was. Suddenly, a hand touched the back of his ear. Chu Wanning's body suddenly trembled. He tried to suppress it, but he still could not help it. He trembled slightly. He did not often have physical contact with others, so he was not used to it. Moreover, the person who touched his ear was Mo Ran. The rough and wide palm rubbed against the delicate skin of his ear. In just a moment, his back went numb. Chu Wanning still had his eyes lowered. He suspected that if he raised his head now, even if the light was dim, even if the copper mirror was blurred, the person behind him would be able to see that his face was abnormally red. He could only continue on biting the hairband and try to remain calm. He said, "Are you done washing?" N. The man's voice was low and slightly hoarse. Chu Wanning felt that he was so close to him. There was a chill from the cold night on his body, but it could not hide the man's vigorous and hot breath. This breath made him dizzy. His thoughts became blurry and slow, and he could not turn around. Mo Ran helped him gather the loose strands of hair that had slid down. He wanted to say something, but stopped. "Shizun, just now What did he want to say? Chu Wanning bit the hairband and lowered his eyes. His heart was beating fast. It seemed that what he wanted to ask was too difficult to say. Mo Ran paused for a moment, then changed the topic. "Forget it, it's nothing." It's so late, and you're still tying up your hair? Chu Wanning did not answer. He only felt that the body behind him was too close. So hot. Are you going out? Chu Wanning replied with, no, I'm just going out to wash the dishes. I'll help you. Chu Wanning said, I have hands and feet. Mo Ran smiled behind him. He seemed to be looking for something to talk about. He smiled awkwardly. It's good that you have hands and feet, but Shizun is also clumsy. I'm afraid you might break something. Chu Wanning. Seeing that he did not speak, he thought that he was unhappy with his reply. Mo Ran withdrew his smile and said seriously, the water outside is cold. Remember to take some hot water out. Chu Wanning responded. It was a little like an N, but also a little like a hum. The sound was indistinct, but it was very pleasant to hear. When it fell into Mo Ran's ears, it urged the budding feeling in his chest to be more aggressive. His Adam's apple moved slightly. His eyes fell on Chu Wanning's pale neck that was exposed from the edge of his clothes when he lowered his head. He felt even more frustrated. He swallowed subconsciously, but tried to make the sound as soft as possible. He did not want Chu Wanning to hear it. Mo Ran took a deep breath and forced a smile. He said, this mirror is so blurry. It probably hasn't been used for too long. Shizun, you can't see clearly. Give me the hairband. I'll comb your hair for you. Chu Wanning bit the snow blue band. Before he could refuse, Mo Ran held the hairband in his hand. In this case, he could not bite it anymore. He could only let go of it resentfully and let Mo Ran tie his ponytail for him. He pretended to be arrogant and snorted. Do you know how to do it? If you don't do it well, I'll have to do it again. Shizun, have you forgotten? In the peach blossoms spring, I even braided your hair. Chu Wanning was suddenly speechless. Xia Si Ne was his shameful past. He did not want it to be mentioned again. He closed his eyes and frowned, letting Mo Ran help him comb and tie his hair. However, Mo Ran's palm kept brushing against his ear. It made him feel uneasy. His scalp was numb and his throat was slightly dry. He frowned even more. Why aren't you done yet? Mo Ran laughed in a low voice. You're always so impatient. Don't worry, it'll be done soon. His voice seemed to be closer than before. It was just behind his ear. Chu Wanning could not help but clench his hands that were hanging in his sleeves. He did not know if it was his own misperception, but he kept feeling that Mo Ran's breathing was somewhat heavy. It was the kind of heaviness that a wild beast would have before pouncing on its prey. This made him feel like a prey that was being targeted. It seemed like a beast would pounce on him from behind, press him in front of the bronze mirror and would greedily and hungrily bite his throat and suck the blood gurgling in his veins. Sometimes, a person's perception was astonishingly accurate. Although Chu Wanning felt it, due to his feeling of inferiority, he did not dare to believe it. How could he know that if he were to raise his head at this moment, what he would see in the mirror would be Mo Ran's eyes burning in the darkness? Desire and rationality were clashing within them, sparks flying and smoke rising everywhere. Mo Ran held the smooth silk hairband. The clear-headed half of him was controlling his body. He obediently helped Chu Wanning tie his hair. Meanwhile, the dark half of his soul was thinking anxiously. What was he doing? Tying the hairband? But this hairband was clearly tied in the wrong place. He felt that he should roughly press Chu Wanning down in front of the old and abandoned dressing table. He should use the hairband to cover his eyes. His other hand should wrap around the front of his face and grab his chin. He should kiss him as if he was thirsting for blood. He should press down on him tightly and absorb the sweetness in his mouth. He should suck on the soft tip of his tongue. He should clearly be fiercely rubbing against Chu Wanning's ear and licking the tiny mole behind his ear. He should be heavily panting, sticking close to Chu Wanning's ear and lowering his voice to ask him. Chu Wanning, my good Shizun. Why did you keep that brocade pouch? Wanning. Wanning. Do you, like me? His longing heart felt like it was about to burst. His blood was boiling. His eyes were hot and red. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 176. Shizun, by me. After Chu Wanning had his ponytail tied, he went outside to wash the dishes, which was comprising of 3 bowls. He waited for a long while after washing the dishes before re-entering the room. Meanwhile, Moran sat on the bed, somewhat anxious. His fingers unconsciously scratched the edge of the bed, occasionally glancing out of the window. What to do? He was thinking. Tonight, how should we sleep? This was a seemingly simple question, but the fact was the situation was quite serious. Moran couldn't understand Chu Wanning's intentions. He himself was even more conflicted, what with his desires fighting with his rationality. At this time, the warm curtains were lifted, and Chu Wanning returned to the room with the washed bowls, bringing a bit of the chilly air from outside. He glanced at Moran, who was sitting by the bed. The candlelight flickered and his gaze seemed to be somewhat indescribable. But in the next moment, his eyes fell, and before Moran could see clearly, he had already sat by the table with his back to him. Shizun, aren't you going to sleep yet? As soon as the words left his mouth, he felt that he had misspoken. No matter how he listened to it, it only sounded like a thirsty man, urgently inviting his lover to go to bed. Chu Wanning didn't turn his head, but he replied to Moran as casual as he could, I still have some things to do. If you're sleepy, you could sleep first. Moran said, Shizun, what do you want to do? I'll help you. You can't help. I want to make a few Haitang communication flowers tonight. As Chu Wanning spoke, he raised his hand and pinched his fingertips, forming a golden and tender Haitang flower, and placed it on the top of the table. This Haitang flower was formed by Chu Wanning's spiritual energy and could be used to send short messages. This was a secret technique unique to him, and therefore, no one else could imitate it. But Moran was somewhat puzzled. He came to the table, pulled out a chair and sat down. His strong arms rested on the back of the chair, and his chin rested on his arms. Why is Shizun doing this? I'm going to sell them. Hearing the slight surprise in Moran's voice, Chu Wanning looked up and glanced at him. We don't have enough money to stay on Flying Flower Island for 7 days. Didn't Sun Sunyang want to do business? Then I'll do the same as her. The Haitang communication flower can be used all year round. The golden light in it is resplendent. Look at all the gold and silver jewelry on her body. Which one of them isn't shining? I think she just likes shiny things. Once it's done, I'll sell it on the streets tomorrow. I'll see if she wants it. Moran couldn't help but laugh. Shizun wants to sell flowers. Chu Wanning's expression changed slightly. He probably didn't want to put himself in the same category as the girls selling white orchids in the alley, so he said very stiffly, flowers made by magic is of different category. Then I'll go with you tomorrow. Chu Wanning didn't say anything. He lowered his head and quickly created 4 or 5 flowers. Then he said in a muffled voice, do as you wish, as long as you don't find it embarrassing. How is it embarrassing? Moran picked up one of the flowers and smelled it. The flower was very light and didn't have any fragrance. The way it flowed with light was very graceful and unique though. The golden light shone on his handsome face and dark eyelashes. He said with a smile, that Sun Sunyang will probably cry and beg Shizun to sell it to her. How much does Shizun want to sell it for? 100 of them won't cost much spiritual energy. How about 3 copper coins for one? Moran. Chu Wanning looked at him again and slightly frowned. He hesitated and said, is it too much? Moran sighed. He didn't say it was too much, nor did he say it was too little. He only said, tomorrow, Shizun, don't give any a price. I'll sell it. Why? I made these flowers, I should set the price for them myself. 3 copper coins. Mo Ran stretched out 3 fingers and waved them in front of Chu Wanning, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Shizun, you're the Baidu immortal. This is your evening haetang, something that cultivators can't even get their hands on. You have to sell them for at least 3 copper coins. No one asked me for it before. Besides looking good and being able to transmit sound, this thing has no other use. I think this price is about right. Mo Ran almost burst out in laughter but suppressed himself. Then, can you sell them all to me? I'll give you the money right now. Chu Wanning stopped. A half-formed haetang flower lost the support of spiritual flow and dropped a dazzling golden petal. He actually really did stretch out his palm and said lightly, "Deal." Mo Ran was speechless for a long time. He touched his money pouch and then remembered that whatever money Chu Wanning and he had on them were squeezed out by that old turtle. He couldn't help but feel slightly embarrassed. When he looked up, he saw Chu Wanning looking at him with a smile that wasn't really a smile. He couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. He muttered, "Shizun already knew that I don't have money, and..." Chu Wanning found him to be funny and said, "You were the one who boasted that you wanted to buy it?" He silently swallowed his words. Because he suddenly felt that Chu Wanning's words were a little ambiguous. Chu Wanning should have said "buy my flowers," but he was lazy to expound on his sentence. Instead, it sounded like Mo Ran wanted to spend money to buy the man in front of him. Mo Ran's heart suddenly beat faster. He didn't look at Chu Wanning's eyes, afraid that the other man would see through his wicked thoughts. But when he looked down at the hand he was holding, he suddenly realized that Chu Wanning had washed the dishes in icy cold water outside and his fingers had turned red from the cold. Mo Ran didn't have time to think too much. Almost out of habit, he grabbed the 5 outstretched fingers on the table. Chu Wanning was shocked. He was pretending to be calm. He stretched out his hand to ask for the money, but he didn't get the money. Instead, his hand suddenly fell into a pair of warm and broad palms. The temperature of the palms was just right, but he felt like he was being burned by hot coals. He suddenly pulled away. "What are you doing?" Mo Ran originally didn't have such dirty thoughts about holding his hands. He really just wanted to warm Chu Wanning as he felt sorry for him for being cold. But he never expected to encounter such a big reaction. For a moment, he was stunned. The 2 people looked at each other under the dim candlelight. Suddenly, the candlelight flickered and broke the silence. Chu Wanning realized that he was being too sensitive. He didn't say anything for a while. He pursed his lips and felt a little embarrassed. Mo Ran looked at his silent appearance. The young seedling in his heart grew stronger and stronger. It tried to stretch its soft little body, tickling his chest even more. "Shizun. Chu Wanning. Are you?" Halfway through his sentence, he stopped. He didn't know what was waiting in front of him. His rationality finally pulled him back from the brink, and he didn't continue what he was intending to say. But even though he didn't finish his sentence, Chu Wanning still replied with, "No." Mo Ran was stunned. "What do you mean by no?" "No matter what you say, the answer is no. Chu Wanning frowned and raised his sharp thorns. He was like a cat guarding its territory, not letting strangers come close. "Take your hand away." Mo Ran took his hand away and continued to put it on the back of the chair, looking very obedient. Chu Wanning continued to create flowers and he finished creating the haetang that had dropped a petal. He was feeling little angry, however that anger contained more helplessness than rage. After a while, Mo Ran said, "Shizun, actually, I just wanted to ask if you were cold. I wanted to warm your hand." "I'm not cold." Liar, the hand that I had just touched was clearly icy cold. Probably feeling that it was really awkward for the 2 of them to sit like this, Chu Wanning said, "If there's nothing else, just go to sleep. Tomorrow, I will take you with me to sell these flowers. In the past, he would often say, I'll take you to practice, or I'll take you to meditate, or I'll take you to read books. Take you to sell flowers or something like that. Moran wanted to hold it in, but he couldn't. His black eyes were smiling. Under the candlelight, he hummed in agreement, but he could not bear to move. Go to sleep. Moran glanced at the bed. He decided that no matter what, he couldn't sleep before Chu Wanning. Since he wasn't sure whether he should sleep on the bed or on the floor, then he would see what Chu Wanning wanted. If he slept in the innermost position, obviously making space for him, then he would sleep on the bed. If Chu Wanning slept in the middle, then he would just be honest. Moran's face turned red as he thought of doing something mischievous. I don't want to sleep for now. Are you just going to keep sitting there? Chu Wanning frowned. Moran raised his hand and closed his 5 slender fingers. Using his spiritual power, he formed a fiery red butterfly. Chu Wanning was speechless. I will be selling these as well. Moran smiled. With a light flick of his finger, the fiery red butterfly flew up and landed in the pile of hatang flowers that Chu Wanning put aside. It dived in and flapped its glittering wings like the real pollinators it was modeled from, going in and out of the flower. This one would be more expensive. I'm not as nice as Shizun. It'll cost 10 gold for one. Chu Wanning watched the irksome butterfly fly around and stop on his hatang flowers, licking the delicate powder. Chu Wanning's face darkened. Mo Wei. What's wrong? He was so angry that he didn't know what to say or how to say it. In the end, he suppressed it and said in a hoarse voice, 3 copper coins for one, no more. Moran laughed. After laughing for a while, he created another fiery red butterfly and handed it over. That butterfly gently landed on the hatang flower on Chu Wanning's fingertips. I will sell it to others for 10 gold each. I think this price is very appropriate. Then sell it to me. Chu Wanning took a deep breath and said fiercely, I'll then resell it. In short, it can't be more expensive than my hatang flowers. After thinking for a while, he added, but I don't have money on me right now. I'll give it to you when we get back at Shisheng Peak. Moran smiled and created the 3rd butterfly. He gently blew on it and that butterfly danced around Chu Wanning. Moran rested his head on his strong tanned arm and said gently, what are you talking about? Don't tell me you still want to say no credit. Chu Wanning slightly raised his chin. His eyes were still wet with anger, but his expression was very haughty. He thought it through. If Moran really dared to say no credit, then he would point out the etiquette between master and disciple and teach this arrogant man a lesson. The arrogant man smiled even more brightly, which emphasized the dimples on his cheek. His voice was deep and shallow as he said, no, I want to say. What did he want to say? Chu Wanning was gearing up for battle, looking down at Moran with domineering expression. You can buy me. It was unknown if it was intentional or not, but he also omitted the word spirit butterfly, so his words became vague and ambiguous. He rested his head on his arm and seriously stared at Chu Wanning. He gently smiled and said, then you'll get these for free. No matter what, he didn't expect this kind of answer. Chu Wanning was startled and then his face suddenly turned red. It was already very late at night. The spirit butterflies and hatang flowers were piled up in the room. There were already enough of them to sell. But neither of them made the move to go to sleep. There was no need to say anything more about Moran's thought. He planned to see how Chu Wanning will sleep and then act according to the circumstances. Chu Wanning didn't know his plan, but he wasn't stupid. Since he wasn't sure, he planned to see what Moran would do tonight. Would he sleep on the floor, or on the bed? Although this man was getting more and more dangerous, if Moran really did lay down on the bed, he didn't plan to chase him away. He could even sense a secret hope in his heart, the hope to see a weary Moran getting up and saying, I'm sleepy, who would then proceed to lay down on the bed. Why wasn't he sleeping yet? Chu Wanning and Mo Ran both thought anxiously as they played with the flowers and butterflies. Go to sleep. Lie on the bed first, I'll. Shizun. Yes. Aren't you tired? It's too late. Why don't you rest first? No need, I'm used to staying up late. And so, another 2 hours passed. Mo Ran. Yes. Why are you still sitting there? I'll create more butterflies. If Shizun is sleepy, you can go to sleep first. Chu Wanning tried his best to resist the urge to yawn and clenched his teeth. However, he hadn't slept for 2 consecutive nights, his eyes were a little red. He stubbornly said, I'm not sleepy yet. Mo Ran. After some time, the butterflies and hatang flowers in the room piled up as high as the ocean. The gold and red intertwined, bright and dazzling. Mo Ran drowsily raised his head and was suddenly startled. Chu Wanning was really too tired. He had already fallen asleep on the table. There was even a half-formed hatang flower at the tip of his finger. The petals trembled slightly as he breathed. Mo Ran walked over and gently picked up the remaining half of the flower. He put it on the table and then picked Chu Wanning up. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 177. Shizun pretends to sleep. Chu Wanning hadn't slept for the past 2 days, and so when he fell asleep this time, it was quite soundly. Mo Ran's movements were gentle as he took him into his warm arms and carried him to the bed, thus preventing him from being disturbed. Mo Ran put him in down at the center of the bed. He then put his hand on his neck so he could put his head on the pillow and then covered him with the quilt. After doing all this, he didn't leave. He just stared at that face with infatuation, from the dark eyebrows down to his thin lips, inch by inch. Beautiful. How could his Shizun, his Wanning, be so beautiful? He was so beautiful that he looked at him, his heart would soften and his lower body would become hard. His scalp was slightly numb and reason strangled his neck. He knew that this was wrong, but Chu Wanning's face was so close. The faint hatang scent on his body was like countless pairs of soft claws, tearing apart his delicate clothes, seducing him to get naked and lay on the warm bed with him. Maybe it was because the blood in Mo Ran's veins was surging like a river, or maybe it was because his heart was beating like a drum, or maybe it was because his eyes were too hot, burning the sleeping person awake. In short, Chu Wanning opened his eyes and suddenly woke up. For a moment, no one made a sound. Mo Ran stood stiffly on his place. Meanwhile, Chu Wanning's drowsiness turned into astonishment in an instant. His pair of phoenix eyes opened wide, meeting Mo Ran's blazing eyes. Chu Wanning was suddenly alert as he asked, "What are you doing?" The expression on the handsome young man's face was hard to determine. He slowly leaned down and Chu Wanning was so shocked that he didn't dare to move. "You." He was getting closer and closer. His heart was thumping. Shat. A light sound came from the bedside. Suddenly, the surrounding light dimmed, making the atmosphere even more ambiguous and hazy. Mo Ran leaned over and pulled the bed curtains tight. He straightened up and sat by the bed. He lowered his head to look at Chu Wanning, who was lying on the bed. His voice was low and slow. "I saw that Shizun was fast asleep, so I wanted to help you put down the bed curtain. I didn't expect that it would wake you up." Chu Wanning didn't make a sound. He leaned against the pillow and turned his head slightly to look at him. The dark yellow curtains that had just been unhooked fluttered behind Mo Ran. The candlelight outside became so hazy, like the mist on the window in winter. It was too dark and the young man's handsome face was almost impossible to see clearly. In the dark night, only a pair of eyes were shining brightly, like falling stars. Mo Ran suddenly called out, "Shizun. There's something I want to ask you." With the help of the darkness, the disciple's courage seemed to have grown. Chu Wanning's chest tightened as he thought, is he going to ask about that brocade pouch? His face was calm, but his heart was surging with emotions. Is it too late to pretend to be asleep now? Mo Ran asked, where should I sleep? Chu Wanning was speechless. Thus, after being busy for most of the night, Mo Ran decided to sleep on the floor. The bed is too small. In fact, he regretted asking just now. His body was still young and full of vigor, so it was better not to sleep with Chu Wanning. It wasn't like he did not know how terrible a man's desire could be. I'll sleep on the floor. Is there an extra bedding? There is a sleeping mat. Won't it be cold? No, I'll just lay down more straw. As Mo Ran said this, he went outside to get some straw. He came back with a pile and laid it on the floor. Chu Wanning was no longer sleepy after being tormented by him just now. He leaned to the side and propped up his head. With one hand, he lifted the curtains of the bed. He silently watched as the man busied himself and quickly prepared a bed for himself. Sleep, Shizun. Sweet dreams. The man lay down with his clothes on and pulled the blanket over himself. His dark eyes were gentle and steady as he looked at Chu Wanning on the bed. Chu Wanning, Seeing Mo Ran's I'm innocent look, Chu Wanning was also relieved. He put on an I'm very cold and aloof face and casually put down the bed curtain and lay down. However, Mo Ran sat up again. What are you doing? I'm going to turn off the lights. The young man then got up and blew out the candles. The room fell into silence. The master and disciple lay on the bed, each with their own thoughts. They looked at the hatang flowers and butterflies which were faintly lit in the dark night. Shizun. What's wrong? Are you still not going to sleep? I'm going to sleep. Mo Ran's voice was very gentle. In the night, it was especially soft. I just suddenly wanted to tell you something. Chu Wanning pursed his lips. Although his heart was not beating as fast as when he first made wild guesses, he still could not help but feel his throat go dry. I wanted to say. Shizun, you don't have to be so reserved when you sleep. You always sleep in a corner. There was a hint of a smile in his voice. It was low, but very pleasant to hear. Chu Wanning. I got used to it. Why? My room is always too messy. Previously, when I flipped over and fell down, I was stabbed by a file on the floor. Mo Ran heard this and did not speak for a long time. Chu Wanning waited. When there was no movement, he asked, what's wrong? Nothing. Mo Ran said, but his voice seemed to be closer. Chu Wanning turned his head. Through the soft and fuzzy curtain, he saw him pull the mattress closer to him with the help of the fluorescent light from the hatang flowers and butterflies. Mo Ran lay down again and said with a smile, when I'm here, Shizun doesn't have to worry. You won't get stabbed when you fall. He paused, then said seemingly casually, I'm here. After a while, Mo Ran heard the person on the bed snort softly and say faintly, the flesh on your arm is so hard. If one got stabbed by it, it won't be much better than a file. Mo Ran laughed, there's something even harder. Shizun hasn't seen it yet. He was talking about the muscles on his chest, but before he finished speaking, he suddenly became aware of the thick stench of blood that permeated his words. He was stunned and hurriedly said, that's not what I meant. Chu Wanning was already silent and awkward when he heard the first sentence. When he heard the second sentence, the atmosphere between the two of them sank even deeper into the abyss. Of course, he knew that Mo Ran had something even harder and hotter. It was even more chilling than the handle of the golem he made himself. Putting aside that damn size ranking list, he himself had unintentionally felt it through his clothes. It was a kind of terrifying passion that made one's whole body tremble and numb. Chu Wanning said impatiently, I'm sleeping. Right. But how could he sleep? The lava of love was tormenting the two of them, licking their chests that were so hot that they were cracking. The room was too quiet. They could hear each other's weak breathing, hear each other tossing and turning on the bed. Mo Ran put his hands behind his head and opened his eyes, looking at the fiery red butterflies fluttering all over the room. A spirit butterfly fluttered down and stopped on the bed curtains, covering the curtain with a gentle, thin scarlet glow. In this kind of silence, Mo Ran suddenly remembered something. Back then at the Jinjinj Lake, the person who saved him from the Zaxinliu's nightmare had vaguely said something in his ear. At that moment, his spiritual sense was blurry. He wasn't sure whether those words were his imagination or not. But now that he thought about it, he suddenly felt that maybe he didn't hear wrong. Maybe it was true. At that time, he heard Chu Wanning say, "I like you too." Mo Ran's heart beat faster and faster. Some minor details that he didn't notice in the past were all sprouting at this moment, turning into fresh and tender leaves. Then, nourished by his wolfish ambition, they grew into a lush tree, large enough to reach the sky. His head was buzzing as his vision became blurry. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. "I like you too. I like you too." If he really misheard those words back then, if Chu Wanning didn't say that, then why was Chu Wanning unwilling to admit that he was the one who saved him after they escaped the illusion at Jinjinj Lake? Unless he didn't mishear. Unless Chu Wanning really said. Mo Ran sat up abruptly. He was so excited that he couldn't control himself. He said hoarsely, "Shizun." Even though the person behind the curtain didn't move, Mo Ran still asked, "Today, when I was washing clothes, I picked up something, is it?" It was very quiet behind the curtain. "Do you know what it is?" When the words came to his mouth, he suddenly became timid. He actually asked Chu Wanning so stupidly. The other didn't answer for a long time. Mo Ran hesitated, his eyes were wet and dark. "Shizun, are you still awake? Did you hear me?" On the bed covered by the curtain, Chu Wanning didn't move anymore. It seemed that he had really fallen asleep. Mo Ran waited for a long time. He was unwilling to give up. Several times he reached out to open the curtain, but he froze midway. "Shizun," he muttered, lying down again. His voice was very soft. "Please pay attention to me." Of course, Chu Wanning wouldn't bother with him. His entire being was in chaos, and the clear mind that he had always prided himself on was now filled with a cloud of smoke. He lay on the bed, staring at the dark curtains with his eyes open. He thought slowly and stiffly, what does Mo Ran want to do? He thought a lot, made all kinds of outrageous guesses, but he didn't dare to guess the most obvious answer. He didn't dare to guess that Mo Ran also liked him. It was like a hungry person who had obtained a piece of fragrant and crispy meat pie. Because it was not easy to obtain, they especially wanted to treasure it. Therefore, they ate up the outer layer of the pie, but could not bear to eat the last remaining meat filling for a long time. Chu Wanning listened to the gentle yet anxious murmur of the person outside the curtain. He quietly pulled the quilt up, covering his chin, mouth, and nose, only revealing a pair of bright eyes. Then he covered his eyes as well, hiding his whole body underneath the quilt. Of course, he heard him, but he didn't know how to answer. His heart pounded and his palms were covered with sweat. He had a sense of being forced into a dead end. He hated that he couldn't sit up and roar, "Yes, I fucking hid that brocade pouch. I like you. Are you satisfied? Scram. Stop asking and go to sleep." He was tormented and nervous. His heart was itching badly. "Shizun. Is he really asleep?" After a while, Chu Wanning heard Mo Ran sigh softly. He covered his head with the quilt. In the darkness, he was filled with regret, fear, nervousness, and sweetness. All sort of mixed feelings were churning inside of him. He told himself to be calm, but in the end his cheeks burned. He couldn't help but secretly kick the quilt. End chapter.